welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into a case that, well, gripped so many people for so long. The Delphi murders.
We are. It's the terrible 2017 murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German in Delphi, Indiana, 13 and 14 years old.
And what made this case just instantly national news, really, was the evidence left behind.
Exactly. It came from one of the victims, Liberty German, Libby. She actually recorded audio and video on her phone during the encounter. It's haunting, but also incredibly brave.
It made the case feel like it should have been solved quickly, but it dragged on for 6 years.
Right. And that's what we're diving into. The sources really map out this long investigation, the frustration, the breakthroughs.
And specifically how this huge search involving, state police, FBI, thousands of tips, how it all eventually hinged on, believe it or not, a volunteer finding a misfiled piece of paper, a clerical error.
It's almost unbelievable. Our goal here is to trace that path from having the killer's face and voice right at the start, to stalling for 5 years, and then finally the conviction of Richard Allen in 2024. All because of that one tip getting lost in the system.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Part 1. The crime itself and those first clues.
It starts Monday, February 13th, 2017. Abby and Libby are dropped off near the Monon High Bridge Trail. It's an old railroad bridge, pretty remote spot. They were planning to hike there.
And we have a pretty tight timeline, don't we?
Very tight. We know Libby posted a Snapchat photo of Abby on the bridge at 2:07 p.m. That's the last time anyone heard from them publicly.
They were supposed to be picked up at 3:15 p.m. by Libby's dad.
Correct. When they didn't show up, the alarm was raised. By 5:30 p.m., they were officially reported missing.
A massive search started almost immediately.
It did. But tragically, it turned into a recovery mission the next day. Tuesday, around noon, their bodies were found. Not right on the bridge, but about half a mile east, down near Deer Creek.
And law enforcement moved incredibly fast with releasing evidence, didn't they?
Almost instantly. By February 15th, just 2 days after the girls went missing and 1 day after they were found, police released that photo. The grainy image of the man on the bridge walking towards them.
The man they called the bridge guy.
That's him. And then a week later, February 22nd, came the audio.
Yes. That short clip from Libby's phone.
Just a few words, muffled but unmistakable. A man's voice saying, "Guys, down the hill."
Chilling. And Libby was hailed as a hero for capturing that.
Absolutely. Police highlighted her, presence of mind and fortitude. She secretly recorded it. That recording, that image. That was the case for years.
So they had his picture, they had his voice. It seems like everything needed to catch him was right there from day one.
You'd think so. But that's the paradox here. This incredibly strong victim-generated evidence existed, yet the case went cold.
How cold are we talking? What happened over the next few years?
Well, part 2 is really about that long search and the unexpected break. Despite massive media attention, a reward that climbed over $40,000. Nothing seemed to stick.
Leads poured in, right? Thousands of them.
Tens of thousands. Investigators kept saying they believed the suspect was local, maybe hiding in plain sight, someone familiar with Delphi. But they were just swamped.
And the public image of the suspect actually changed over time, which must have been confusing.
It was. Remember the sketches. First, in July 2017, they released one sketch based on eyewitness accounts.
Okay.
Then, almost 2 years later, April 2019, they held a press conference, announced a new direction, and released a second, totally different sketch. This one looked much younger.
So which one was it? Were they looking for the older guy or the younger guy?
Exactly. It created confusion. The second sketch, they later clarified, wasn't based on a new witness, but more on their evolving profile of the killer, perhaps linking to the audio and video more. It suggested they were, struggling to pin down who they were really looking for.
It sounds like they were almost starting over, years into it.
In a way, yes. Chasing leads for both descriptions. The investigation felt stalled. Years passed.
Until September 2022. And this is where the story takes that incredible turn. The volunteer file clerk.
This is the core of it. A volunteer, just reviewing old tips, finds one from 2017 about a Richard Allen, but his last name had been misspelled in the system.
By typo.
A simple typo. Because of that misspelling, the tip file was somehow miscategorized, maybe flagged incorrectly, and essentially marked as cleared or resolved. It just fell through the cracks.
So this potentially crucial tip was invisible to the active investigation team for 5 years.
Pretty much. It was sitting there, dormant. And when this volunteer flagged it and investigators finally looked at the actual content, it was a bombshell.
What did the tip say?
It documented that Richard Allen, who lived right there in Delphi, had actually approached a conservation officer from the Department of Natural Resources just 3 days after the murders.
He went to them.
Yes. He told the officer he'd been on the trails that same afternoon, February 13th, and that he'd seen 3 girls on the trail.
He put himself right at the location at the right time, days after the crime.
He did, voluntarily. But because the tip was essentially lost in the system, it wasn't properly followed up on or connected dots weren't made for years.
So when they finally re-interviewed him in 2022, now knowing about this buried tip, what did he say?
Well, his story had inconsistencies. Back in 2017, in that initial brief chat with the DNR officer, he'd mentioned being on the trail for about 2 hours.
Okay.
In the 2022 interview, when police pressed him, he admitted he was wearing clothes matching the bridge guy jeans and a black or blue jacket. And his reason for being on the bridge that day, he claimed he just went up there to watch fish.
Watch fish?
Yeah.
From an abandoned railroad bridge.
Yeah. The conflicting statements, combined with the rediscovered tip placing him there, suddenly made him their primary focus after 5 years of searching.
Wow. Okay, so that leads us to part 3, the evidence that finally brought the case together for trial.
Right. Once Allen was arrested, the probable cause affidavit was unsealed, and we learned about key evidence police had held back.
Like what? What tied him definitively?
First, details from Libby's video. It apparently showed one of the girls mentioning the word gun right as the man approached them, just before he ordered them down the hill.
Suggesting he was armed from the start.
Correct. And then the major physical evidence, that there's like an unspent bullet, a .40 caliber round.
Where was it found?
Less than 2 feet from one of the victims' bodies, just lying there on the ground between them.
And they connected it to Allen.
Yes. Forensic analysis determined that this specific bullet had been cycled through a Sig Sauer P226 handgun owned by Richard Allen. Not fired, but cycled through the action.
How can they tell that?
The ejection and feeding mechanism of a gun leaves unique microscopic marks on a cartridge case, even if it's not fired. They called it a match based on the quality and quantity of marks. It was his gun.
That's incredibly specific. Any other corroborating evidence?
There was also a witness statement from that day. Someone reported seeing a man walking away from the bridge area looking muddy and bloody and wearing a blue jacket and jeans, matching Allen's own description of his clothes.
So the pieces started fitting together very tightly once they focused on him.
Extremely tightly. And the trial itself in late 2024 brought even more disturbing details to light.
I remember reading some of the reports. The prosecution revealed some shocking specifics about the crime scene itself.
They did. For the first time, it was publicly stated that the girls had their throats cut. Just brutal details.
And there was something else, something about the clothing.
Yes, a particularly bizarre and unsettling detail. Abby Williams was found fully clothed, but she was wearing Libby German's clothes. And Libby was found nude nearby.
That's deeply disturbing. It speaks to a level of control and, I don't know, ritualistic behavior almost.
It certainly points to a very disturbed individual. And then there was the voice analysis.
Matching the down the hill audio.
Exactly. A state police master trooper testified. He'd reviewed hundreds, over 700 of Allen's phone calls made from jail.
Okay.
And he concluded, based on that extensive comparison, that the voice on Libby's recording was indeed Richard Allen's voice.
So you have the image, the voice match, the bullet from his gun, the witness seeing someone bloody.
And then, perhaps the most overwhelming part, the confessions.
Right. Prosecutors said he confessed repeatedly while incarcerated.
Repeatedly doesn't quite cover it. They stated he confessed to the murders more than 60 times.
60? How? To whom?
In all sorts of ways. In writing, over the phone, in person. He apparently confessed to his wife, his mother, other family members, fellow inmates, prison employees, even to a psychologist who was evaluating him.
He confessed to the defense's own psychologist.
He did. It was a complicated part of the trial. The defense argued Allen had serious mental health issues, schizophrenia, delusions, a grave disability.
Okay. Trying to establish maybe he wasn't responsible or competent?
That seemed to be the direction. But that same clinical psychologist, called by the defense, also testified about what Allen told her during their sessions.
And what was that?
She testified that Allen told her his original plan was sexual assault. But he claimed he got scared off by seeing a van nearby, so he ran. And then, horrifyingly, he told her he had cut the girls' throats and covered their bodies with sticks.
So even the defense's witness, ended up providing testimony about a detailed confession.
Exactly. It painted this awful picture of the final moments, making his claims of innocence or delusion very hard for the jury to accept, it seems.
Which brings us to the conclusion, the legal outcome.
After all those years, the trial moved relatively quickly once it started. On November 11th, 2024, the jury delivered its verdict.
Guilty on all counts.
Guilty. 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of felony murder. The judge then imposed the maximum possible sentence,
Which was?
130 years in prison. That's 65 years for each girl's murder, to be served consecutively, one after the other.
Ensuring he'll never be released. It's legal closure, finally.
It is. But the community, Delphi, they've worked hard to ensure Abby and Libby aren't forgotten, that their legacy is more than just this crime.
You mentioned the park.
Yeah, the Abby and Libby Memorial Park. It's a beautiful space built by the L&A Park Foundation. They even got an NBA All-Star Legacy grant for it. It's a place for community gatherings, sports, nature, focused on life.
That's wonderful. And other memorials, too.
Their middle school library was renamed in their honor, and you still see those orange porch lights across central Indiana. That started as a sign the killer was still out there, a call for vigilance. Now it's more of a permanent tribute.
A powerful symbol. So wrapping this up, the big takeaway, for me at least, is just the sheer, almost absurd nature of how this massive case finally broke.
It really is striking, isn't it? All the technology, the FBI profiles, the thousands of hours, and it came down to a volunteer catching a typo. A single administrative error that hid the key piece of information for 5 years.
Information provided by the killer himself, just days after the crime.
Hiding in plain sight, just like the police suspected, but buried in their own files. It makes you realize how easily vital data can get lost. Not because it doesn't exist, but because of simple human error or system failures.
The system only corrected itself because one person was diligent enough to spot the mistake in the process.
Precisely.
So maybe the final thought for you, our listeners, is this. Think about the information you deal with, the systems you navigate. Could there be a crucial insight, an important connection, just sitting there, overlooked because of some small snag, some detail assumed to be correct? What might be hiding in plain sight in your own world, just waiting for a closer look?
A sobering thought, definitely.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Delphi murders.